Hey everyone, welcome back. We're doing a deep dive today into something I know a lot of us can relate to on some level, financial conflict in marriage. The story we're looking at today really shows how money issues can be about way more than just dollars and cents. We're exploring a situation where both partners work and they both contribute financially, but it's not exactly a level playing field, if you know what I mean.
It's fascinating how this story makes you question the idea that financial contributions are the only thing that matters for equality in a relationship.
Yeah,
It really shows how important unseen labor and emotional dynamics are.
exactly. And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting. If you just look at the basics, things seem pretty even. They both work and contribute almost equally to household expenses. But then if you look a little closer, you find out the woman in this story handles all the domestic work, cooking, cleaning, taking care of the house, even making sure her husband is ready for work every day. On top of that, she's working her own job and contributing financially. That's a lot to handle.
It is. Research shows that this kind of imbalance, where one person is handling all the domestic labor and the other is mainly focused on finances, can cause a lot of resentment and really hurt the relationship. It makes one person feel taken for granted, like their work doesn't matter, even though it's totally essential for the household to function.
So it's not just about the money itself. It's about feeling valued, like an equal partner. It's like she's working two jobs, one that pays and one that doesn't. They can't feel good.
Exactly. It's the invisible work that causes the most friction. If you think about it, managing a household is like running a business. Budgeting, planning, logistics, solving problems, and then the emotional labor of taking care of a family. All of that takes time and energy, even if there's no paycheck.
And speaking of paychecks, this is where things get even more complicated. The woman in this story doesn't have a regular monthly allowance from her husband. So even though she contributes to household expenses just as much as he does, she basically has to depend on him for her own spending money.
That's really concerning. It makes you think there might be a power imbalance in the relationship. Sometimes an allowance system works out well, but in this case, it seems like it's putting the woman in a financially vulnerable position, which must be really stressful and probably impacts how much control she feels like she has in the relationship.
So basically, she's running the household finances. A&D has to ask for pocket money. That doesn't seem very balanced or respectful, especially when you consider this. The husband often sends money to his extended family, even when their own household budget is tight.
That brings up an important point about boundaries and priorities in a marriage. It's great to support your extended family, of course, but it shouldn't make the immediate family struggle financially or make one partner feel insecure about money.
Yeah, and it's not just the money, it's the message it sends. When money is tight and you're sending it to other people, it kind of makes it seem like your own household isn't the priority.
Exactly. And in this specific case, it gets even worse because when they don't have much money, the husband brings up the money he's given to his wife almost as if she's the reason they're struggling financially.
Oh, wow. That's not great. Honestly, it seems kind of manipulative, like he's trying to make it her fault that they're having money problems, but he's not thinking about all the work she's doing or the fact that he's sending money to his family too.
It does seem like he's avoiding taking responsibility. And
Yeah.
that kind of behavior can really damage a relationship. It can make her feel like she has to be careful all the time, not knowing what to expect.
I bet that's exhausting. She's
Yeah.
doing so much to keep things going, and it's like he's always undermining her.
Exactly. That dynamic can make the partner who is always being criticized feel anxious and insecure, like their contributions aren't good enough or important.
So we've got a clear imbalance in the housework, a possible power issue with the allowance, and some concerning behavior around money priorities. This is a lot to unpack. But before we get to how this is all affecting her emotionally,
Mhm.
I think we should say that this kind of situation isn't unusual. Lots of couples everywhere deal with money problems, and it often points to deeper issues in the relationship.
That's a great point. This is just one story, but it shows some common problems that a lot of couples face.
So to our listener, if this sounds familiar to you, you're not alone. We're going to keep talking about this story, looking at the emotional impact, and talking about some possible solutions. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. We're continuing to look at this tough situation where a woman is feeling undervalued in her marriage, both financially and emotionally. As we've been talking about it, one thing that really gets to me is the amount of emotional labor she's dealing with. It's more than just the practical stuff of running the house. It's that feeling of constantly being taken for granted. That's a really important point. It's like she's stuck between wanting to be a supportive partner and feeling resentful that her work isn't appreciated or reciprocated.
Exactly. And she said that she's Tried talking about what she needs, she's trying to be understanding, but nothing changes. That's where it starts to feel like something worse is going on. Almost like she's being gaslighted into thinking her feelings don't matter.
I see why you'd say that. Gaslighting is when someone tries to control another person by making them question their memories, perceptions, or even their sanity. And in this situation, the husband's dismissive comments, the way he tries to shift the blame, his lack of empathy, it could definitely be seen as gaslighting.
So like when the husband brushes off their money problems with a casual, "Eesh, what can I do?"
Hmm.
That kind of response feels like he doesn't care at all. It makes her feel like she's the only one dealing with the problem.
Absolutely. It sends a very clear message. Your feelings don't matter, your worries aren't valid, and I'm not taking any responsibility for this.
That must feel so isolating. It's like she's always wondering if she's overreacting or being unreasonable.
That's a common experience for people who are being gaslighted. They start doubting themselves, their judgment, even their sanity. And it can be really harmful to their self-esteem and how much control they feel like they have in the relationship.
And it's important to point out that gaslighting can be really hard to recognize when it's happening to you. It can happen so slowly and subtly that it wears down your confidence and sense of self over time.
You're right. It's not always obvious abuse. It's more like little things, small actions or comments that make you question your reality over time.
So what are some signs that someone might be experiencing gaslighting in their relationship?
Well, one thing to watch out for is if your partner always denies or downplays your experiences. For example, if you tell them that something they said or did hurt you, and they say something like, you're being too sensitive or you're making a big deal out of nothing, that shows they don't respect your perspective.
So they're saying your feelings aren't valid, making you feel like you're crazy for feeling the way you do.
Exactly. Another sign is if they often twist things around or try to change the story to make themselves look better. This might involve pretending things didn't happen, blaming you for their actions, or always changing the subject away from what they did.
So they're trying to control how things look to make themselves the good guy and you the bad guy.
Right. And if this keeps happening, you might start questioning your own memory, your perceptions, even your sanity.
That's scary. It's important to remember that gaslighting can happen in any relationship, no matter your gender, how much money you make, or your cultural background. It's just a way for abusers to get power and control over their partners.
Absolutely. And it's never okay. If you see these signs in your relationship, it's crucial to get help. Talk to someone you trust, a therapist, or a domestic violence hotline. You don't have to go through this alone.
That's so important to remember. You deserve a relationship where you feel safe, respected, and heard. If that's not happening, you have the right to get support and make things better.
In thinking about the bigger picture here, it's worth mentioning that they have 3 kids going to a Model C school, which suggests they have certain hopes for their family, but underneath it all, their financial situation seems pretty unstable.
That's an interesting point. It shows the struggle between what they want for their family and what's actually happening with their money.
Hmm.
And it makes you think about what kind of effect this is having on the kids.
Yes, even if the kids don't know all the details about their money problems, they can definitely sense the tension in the house. Kids are very intuitive. They know when something isn't right.
Absolutely. They might not get the ins and outs of money problems, but they feel the stress, the anxiety, the conflict. That can have a lasting impact on how safe and secure they feel.
Exactly. Research shows that kids who grow up with a lot of fighting between their parents are more likely to have emotional and behavioral problems, trouble building healthy relationships, and even physical health issues.
So this isn't just about the couple. It's about the whole family. The money problems are affecting everyone in the house.
It's like a ripple effect. And financial conflict is rarely just about money. It's often tied up with things like power struggles, communication breakdowns, and emotional needs not being met.
So we're really talking about something much bigger than money here. It's about respect, partnership, and creating a secure and healthy environment for everyone. But how do we go from seeing the problem to finding solutions? Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll talk about specific ways to build a better and more equal partnership. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've spent this deep dive talking about the story of financial and emotional imbalance in this marriage, and I'm not going to lie, it's been kind of a downer, but I think it's time to turn things around and talk about solutions. Is there hope for this couple? Can they fix this?
I think there's always hope. Relationships can be tough, but if both people are willing to talk openly and really work on changing things, they can absolutely get through these challenges and build a stronger, happier relationship.
So where do they start? We talked about communicating openly and setting boundaries, but what does that actually look like?
Okay, so imagine this couple sitting down together, maybe even with a therapist to help them talk things through, and having a really honest conversation about their money. It's not just about the numbers, it's about what's important to them, what they're afraid of, what they hope for in the future. They have to acknowledge that there's resentment there and decide together to make a new financial plan that feels fair and respectful to both of them.
So being vulnerable is important. They have to create a safe space where they can each be honest about their feelings and needs without worrying about being judged or blamed. But how do they go from just sharing their feelings to actually changing things?
That's where it gets really interesting. They could try setting up a joint account where both partners put in a percentage of their income. That way, they're both equally invested in the household finances, and it evens out the power dynamic that can happen when one person has more control over the money.
That makes sense. It's about working together instead of one person being in charge.
Hmm.
But what about all the work that the woman is doing around the house? How do they include that?
That's really important. They need to talk honestly about how much her work at home is worth and find a real way to show that it's valuable. Maybe the husband could pay his wife for the work she does at home, or maybe they can split up the chores more evenly so she's not doing everything.
It's almost like they need to write a job description for taking care of the house and then figure out how to pay for that work, either with actual money or by sharing the work more fairly.
That's a great way to think about it. It's about realizing that running a home is a real job, even if there's no regular paycheck.
And I imagine this could also be a good time for them to look at how they spend money as a couple. Do they agree on what they want to do with their money? Do they have the same priorities?
Definitely. They need a budget that works for both of them and reflects what's important to them as a couple. That might mean having some tough conversations about what they really need versus what they just want and finding ways to compromise.
And I can't imagine that conversation will be easy, especially since the husband is also giving money to his extended family. How can they talk about that without making things worse?
This is where empathy and clear communication are super important. The husband needs to understand and acknowledge how his wife feels about making sure their immediate family is financially secure. And he needs to talk to his family in a way that's respectful but also firm.
So it's about setting boundaries, right? Letting them know that he values his family, but that his main financial responsibility is to his wife and kids.
Right. It's about figuring things out so everyone feels like it's fair. Maybe that means setting a limit on how much money he can give each month. Or maybe it means having an open conversation with his family about what they expect and finding other ways to support them that won't strain his own budget.
It's a tricky situation, but I think the most important things are to be open with each other and be willing to find solutions that work for everyone.
I agree. And this isn't a one-time fix. They'll need to keep talking, be willing to adjust as things change, and always remember to put their partnership first.
So it's about building a stronger foundation for their relationship
Right.
based on respect, sharing responsibilities, and really wanting to create a future where they both feel valued and like they have control over their lives.
Perfectly said. And it's good to remember that this is just one couple's story, but a lot of couples face these same problems. Money problems can cause a lot of stress, but they can also help a couple grow and become closer.
And for our listeners who might be going through something similar, what advice would you give them?
If you feel like you're not being heard, like you're not appreciated, or if you're worried about money in your relationship, please know that you're not alone. These things happen more than we realize, and there's nothing wrong with asking for help. Talk to someone you trust, a therapist, or a financial advisor. There are people and resources out there to help you work through these complicated problems and build a healthier, happier relationship.
That's such an important message. Your feelings are real, your needs are important, and you deserve to be in a relationship where you feel safe, respected, and in control. Sometimes that means having tough conversations, setting boundaries, and getting support to create the kind of relationship you really want.
I completely agree. Remember that you have a voice and you have the right to be heard.
Thank you so much for talking with us today. This has been a really eye-opening conversation.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the ups and downs of financial conflicts in marriage. We hope this got you thinking and maybe even inspired you to take some steps toward building stronger, more balanced relationships in your own lives. We'll see you next time.